Packing for a Disney cruise is super exciting, but there are certain things that if you put them in your suitcase and attempt to take them on board, you could have them confiscated, or worse, you could be thrown off your Disney cruise. And speaking as someone who is very excited for her next Disney cruise, I know this is something that none of us wants to happen. So in this video, I am going to share the things you need to avoid packing to get yourself in trouble with Disney Cruise Line, plus some things that you're just not going to need to bother packing, save some space. You've got more space to buy all that merch. Plus the one thing that I was actually planning to pack that I'm so glad I did the research for this video, because if I had packed this one item, I could have potentially been thrown off this Disney cruise, which would have been really bad on so many levels. So stay tuned and I'll let you know about that mistake that I genuinely nearly made. If you're new around here, hi, my name's Rhiannon Morgan. Everyone calls me Rhi. Welcome to my Magical Adventures channel, where I share all things Disney cruise, Disney park, plus magical adventures beyond Disney too. In these videos and the vlogs, I like to share all of the magic of our trips, plus top tips for maximizing your trips and bonus tips if, like me, you have children with autism. So Disney Cruise Line says that it reserves the right to seize and secure any items that may be deemed a security risk. Attempting to bring these items on board could at best delay the delivery of your luggage to your stateroom, because any checked-in luggage that you give to Disney Cruise Line automatically appears at your stateroom for you. But at worst, it could mean you are denied boarding. So these include pretty obvious items such as weapons, firearms, and ammunition. They are not allowed on board a Disney cruise. These do include replica items or toys, with a few exceptions. Exceptions include store-bought lightsabers. I guess you might need one of these if you're doing a Star Wars Day at Sea. You can pack your plastic toy pirate swords, which you might want for Pirate Night. I have got a whole playlist of vlogs if you want to check out all about Pirate Night on a Disney cruise. I'll link those up in the cards and down below. And you can also bring on board, I don't know how to say this because I'm not a big Marvel person. How do you say that? Thor's hammer. Apologies to all the Marvel people, including William, my son, who will be really cross. But basically, you can also bring a plastic store-bought Thor's hammer on board. Ideal if you're doing a Marvel Day at Sea. Things not allowed include, but are not limited to, air guns, BB guns, pellet guns, paint guns, any guns at all for that matter. Just don't take guns on a Disney cruise. In spite of the fact that you might think of taking this to some locations, such as Castaway Cay, where you'll be doing diving, you are not allowed to bring your own diving equipment on board. There is an option to rent equipment for activities such as snorkeling in locations such as Castaway Cay, and some of these can be booked when your onboard activity window opens. When your onboard activity window opens depends on your Castaway Club status, and your Castaway Club status depends on how many times you've cruised with Disney Cruise Line. All of this information can be found on the Disney Cruise Line website, as well as inside of your Magical Cruise Planner. And as you can see here, your Castaway Club status not only gets you early access to bookable activities, I have got a whole blog post and playlist all about bookable activities to explain all of that, but it also gets you early access to booking future cruises and online check-in, which means you're eligible for getting an earlier port arrival time. Again, if you want to know all about online check-in, I have a whole playlist of videos all about that too, so make sure you check those out before you attempt your online check-in. To pick up your copy of your Magical Cruise Planner in either a printed book like this to get delivered straight to your door, or an instant digital printable download, follow the details on screen or down in the description. There are packing lists included inside your Magical Cruise Planner to help you with all of your packing. Back to some more things you should not be packing for your Disney cruise. You're not allowed to pack any satellite receivers, emergency position indicating radio beacons, which are apparently EPIRBs, communication scanners or wideband receivers. I don't own any of those. That was not the thing I was potentially going to pack on my Disney cruise that was going to get me thrown off the ship. Stay tuned for what that actually was. There are fireworks at sea on lots of Disney cruises, but obviously you are not allowed to pack your own fireworks or explosives. The fact that they need to list these things as not allowed on board suggests that people might want to take their own fireworks or explosives on board, or at least attempt to. Who are these people and why are they doing this? You're not allowed any highly flammable liquids, including liquid oxygen. There are no knives, regardless of blade length, permitted to be packed. or any straight razors. Lasers are not allowed on board. Also no restraining devices such as handcuffs, offensive weapons, pepper sprays, tasers, or any other self-defense weaponry. Scissors with a blade of less than 4 inches or with blunt ends are allowed on board. And then Disney Cruise Line does reiterate here that guests found with weapons or other similar items in their baggage may be denied boarding and subject to criminal proceedings. So please do not bring these things on board. Now, a lot of these things seem quite obvious, but honestly, the thing that I was going to pack coming up, I just didn't think it was that obvious, okay? I didn't think that was that obvious, and I'm just so glad that I now know not to pack it. So you are allowed to bring some alcohol on board according to the alcohol policy. The drinking age on the Disney Cruise Line is in accordance with American laws, so it's age 21 and older. So apologies if you're an 18-year-old UK citizen and you can have a drink of alcohol at home, you may not do that on board a Disney cruise, and you can't take any alcohol onto the Disney cruise either. However, if you're over the age of 21, you can take up to 2 bottles of wine or champagne or Prosecco on board per person per port, or actually you could substitute your 2 bottles of wine for 6 bottled beers. The 2 bottles of wine or the bottled beers, it's no spirits. I think they just don't want anyone getting silly drunk on board, which is probably quite sensible when you're out at sea. Anyway, technically, both myself and my husband could take 2 bottles of wine on board each in Southampton. Those bottles do need to be put in our carry-on luggage, not in our check-in baggage, so that they can be shown during the check-in process. But then if we wanted to, we could also pick up more wines. We could get another 2 bottles each at each port. So when we get off at Spain, we've got 2 Spanish ports on our 5-night cruise that we're very excited for. It's coming up very soon on the Disney Fantasy. Then we could technically do that. Now, we probably won't end up bothering to do that because we don't actually end up drinking excessively. I don't drink that much at home anyway, so we'll probably have, some wine with dinner, and we can only actually drink the wine we take on board in our stateroom, not around the rest of the ship. So to be honest, 4 bottles of wine between the 2 of us just to drink in the stateroom for the 5-night cruise will probably be more than enough. In fact, on our first cruise on the Magic, we ended up giving some of our wine away because we just didn't get through it all. By the way, if you are planning a Disney cruise, I have got some free planning resources for you. Head to mummyof4.com/plan cruise, pop your email in there, and I will send them all to your inbox and take you through step by step everything you need to do to plan your cruise. Now for some appliances and electrical items that are prohibited on board. You're not allowed to take on board blenders, bottle sterilizers and warmers, although there are a limited number of approved bottle warmers available on request from guest services. So if you have a small baby that needs a bottle warmed, then fear not, the guest services will have you covered. Just make sure you organise that sooner rather than later because the number of bottle warmers available is limited. You're also not permitted to take on board coffee makers, diffusers, electric blankets, electric irons or steamers. I did think about packing an electric steamer, I'm going to be honest, for a previous cruise, but they're not allowed on board. And luckily, I read the policy before we went on board, so I did not end up packing that and getting in trouble. So make sure you don't do that, because I feel like an electric steamer is a pretty common thing for people to pack to steam over their clothes when they take them out of their suitcase before an evening. But if you do need any clothes pressed, decreased, steamed, then there are laundry facilities on board. Price lists can be found inside of your stateroom. You can speak to guest services about accessing this service once you're on board. On to power adapters. Now, if you are not a US citizen and like us, all your devices have UK plugs, you are going to need power adapters to convert your plugs to US plugs, although there are some European plugs on board too. So if you have plug converters that take your UK devices to American plugs and also to European plugs, pop both of those in your luggage and you can use them on board. However, you are not permitted to take any extension cords on board. Now, this is the kind of thing that I do often have in my suitcase, so I will need to remove before we pack for our Disney cruise, because often when we're staying places, then the plugs aren't necessarily in sensible places, and I do use an extension cord in order to charge things. These are not permitted on Disney Cruise Line. However, you will be pleased to know they have plenty of plug sockets inside the staterooms, and they're on nice sensible places, like on that nice big desk. So you will not need your extension cords, but equally make sure there are none left in your case from previous trips elsewhere, because you're going to get in trouble. You're also not allowed to take ham radios. Are those the ones that where you speak to other people? I'm not even sure what those are. Heating elements, heating pads, pipes for smoking marijuana, hot plates, metal detectors. Who's taking metal detectors on a Disney cruise? Microwave ovens. Are people trying to pack these things? power tools, hand tools, and toolboxes, unless you are an approved vendor actually there to, service the ship. Okay, this is probably something my husband would generally have on him, so we'll make sure he doesn't. You're not allowed to take remote control devices such as drones, toy aeroplanes, or remote control cars. You're also not allowed to take Star Wars droids, which is actually something that kids might want to try and pack for a Star Wars day at sea, so make sure you do not let them. You're not allowed to take toasters and toaster ovens. Are people genuinely trying to pack toasters? Does this need to be in the list because people have tried to take these on a cruise? I'm not sure. You're not allowed to take seasonal and or strands of celebratory light bulbs. So I'm assuming this means strings of fairy lights. Not allowed to pack those. And you're also not allowed to take streaming devices such as an Apple TV, an Amazon Fire Stick. Do not pack those. Then there are some items that you are allowed on board, but they will require inspection just to check that they are safe and compliant. These include baby monitors, humidifiers, portable fans, sleep machines, and white noise machines. So if you use a white noise machine at home or a sleep machine, think about downloading an app on one of your devices that plays these sounds through something like an iPad or a phone, rather than taking your big sleep device with you to avoid having to go through the rigmarole of having it checked. Some exceptions to electrical items that are allowed on board. Hair dryers, let me get this right, must be 220 volt or 2000 watts max, or 110 volt and 1500 watts max. But honestly, just don't bother packing a hairdryer because they supply a hairdryer in the room. So if you're insisting on taking your own hairdryer, make sure they're compliant with those specifications. But there's a hairdryer in the room and it's absolutely fine. And then obviously that comes with a plug that goes straight in the wall. You don't need the adapter for. You are allowed to take curling irons and straighteners, which is good news for me because I use those. They do provide small mats to place these on so that you don't damage the surface of the desk. But I tend to travel with one of those rubber mat sleeve things that my hair straighteners go in anyway, so that wherever I am when I'm traveling, I've got a safe surface to put my hair straighteners onto. Onto their food, beverage, and ice chest policy. So prohibited items in this section include rice cookers, hot plates, microwaves, blenders, bottle sterilizers and bottle warmers. And remember, you can borrow bottle warmers from guest services. You are not allowed to take homemade, pre-cooked or perishable food on board or open food containers. And ice chests and coolers are not allowed apart from the exceptions, which we're going to mention in a minute. You are allowed to bring pre-pumped breast milk, but that has to be in your carry-on. And coolers of no larger than 12 inches by 12 inches by 12 inches can be used in carry-on for storing medications, baby food, and non-perishable items required for dietary requirements. Non-perishable snacks can be brought on board inside of their original packaging. And Disney Cruise Line likes to reiterate here that it reserves the right to seize anything that it deems to be dangerous or a risk to health and safety. On to household and general items. And Disney Cruise Line says, to ensure swift delivery of your luggage to your stateroom, please leave the following items at home. I honestly wonder who is bringing these things on a Disney cruise that they feel they have to write a policy about it. So please don't bring agricultural items such as flowers, plants and fruit, balloons or kites, bottle sterilizers, we've already touched on that. Candles, incense and diffusers, obviously fire risk, don't bring those. Coffee makers, heating elements, blenders, hot plates, microwave ovens and rice cookers. They felt the need to mention this a few times. I honestly feel like people are trying to smuggle microwave ovens on a Disney cruise far more than we know. Electric blankets, electric irons and steamers, extension cords, your ham radio, heating pads, marijuana pipes, illegal narcotics, and there is something that may trip you up there, so we'll get back to that. Inflatable mattresses, knives regardless of blade length, musical instruments, over-the-door hangers are not permitted. Now you can take magnetic hooks, and I'd highly recommend doing this. It's a really handy way to store things like your lanyards, and of course don't forget your magnets for the door. We talked about all of this in the things you should be packing for your Disney cruise video. However, over-the-door hangers are not allowed. It says here pets, so apparently people are trying to take their pets on a Disney cruise. We've already touched on power tools and streaming devices, they're not allowed, but they are reiterated here, and seasonal lighting, so that's fairy lights again. Sports equipment that is not allowed on board. They've listed out all of the guns again, the air, the BB, the pellet, the paint pistols, the rifles and the slingshots, all not allowed. You're also not allowed archery equipment, baseball or cricket bats, boogie boards, diving equipment, including air tanks, spears, spear guns, slings, dive knives, pry bars and underwater scooters. No fishing gear, no hammocks, no hockey or lacrosse sticks, no inflatable pools or rafts, no roller skates or inline skates, pool cues, ski poles, surfboards or waveboards. Apparently they're all different, but don't bring them on a Disney cruise. You will get in trouble. If you have selected a dive or fishing port adventure, all necessary equipment is going to be provided for you. Do not need to try and take it with you and just end up getting in trouble. So there are some exceptions for sporting equipment that is allowed on board. Golf clubs can be brought on board. They must be kept in your stateroom until you are going to your port adventure, and then you may use them at your ports of call only. If you want to do goofy golf on the top deck of the Fantasy or the Dream, then all the equipment is provided there for you. Now we've got a section all about wheeled recreation equipment and transport devices. Items Disney Cruise Line are asking that you leave at home include bicycles, footwear with heels, such as Heelys. This isn't something my kids have, but if your kids have them, leave them at home. Hoverboards, roller skates that we've already talked about. Scooters, with a small exception. Segways, skateboards, and wagons, all not allowed. Although collapsible wagons are allowed. Guests with a mobility disability who will require use of something like a scooter on board need to contact special services before sailing. And guests renting or bringing a manual or electric wheelchair on board must complete the special services form before embarking the ship. Wheeled mobility with 3 or fewer wheels, because they're not stable enough, will be refused boarding. On to some things that you can pack if you want to, but you probably don't need to bother packing before I tell you about my near miss. Towels, you are not going to need to bother to pack them. You could take those cute hooded robe things when your kids get out the pool if you want to, but honestly, the towel supply on the Disney Cruise Line is so plentiful. You can just wrap them up in multiple towels and then Disney Cruise Line will take those away and wash them and you can have fresh towels again. So honestly, I just wouldn't bother packing those, save the space in your case. Hairdryer, technically, if you take your own hairdryer and it falls within the specification we already discussed, you could take a hairdryer, but honestly, just don't bother. The one in the stateroom is fine. You can choose to take your own shampoo, conditioner, and body wash, but the scents on board the Disney Cruise Line, if you know, you know, they smell so good. That Disney Cruise Line smell, it's amazing. So unless your kids have especially sensitive skin, or maybe like my kids who have autism are sensitive to certain smells. I mean, my kids actually love the smell of the toiletries on board the Disney Cruise Line. But unless you have special requirements or very sensitive skin, just use the toiletries on board. They're lovely. And beach toys, most ports have the option to rent beach toys when you get there. So just don't bother taking bulky things. Save the space in your case. Something that is worth noting is that there's loads of space under the beds on the Disney Cruise Line to store your cases. So you don't need to worry about having squishy cases to squash them in small spaces. We often take so many cases when we go on a Disney cruise, and there is more than enough space to put them underneath the beds and tuck them away in the stateroom so it's kept neat and tidy. Now onto something that in part seems quite obvious that is not allowed on Disney Cruise Line. Then on the other hand, not so much, especially if you're from the UK, not from the US. And that's the marijuana and illicit drugs policy. Now, I was not about to go taking illegal drugs on a Disney cruise. Do not panic. I'm going to read you the policy just so that you know where we're at. In accordance to United States federal regulations and local laws in the destinations where we visit, illegal narcotics and drugs, including synthetic designer drugs and medically prescribed marijuana, are prohibited on board the ships and at our island destinations, Castaway Cay and Lookout Cay at Lighthouse Point. Additionally, all drug paraphernalia used for marijuana and cannabis and hemp is prohibited. Medically prescribed marijuana, as well as items derived from or enriched by marijuana, including items products containing THC or CBD, are also prohibited. So like I said, I was not about to go taking illegal drugs on the Disney Cruise Line, and I am not prescribed medical marijuana, so that was not going to be an issue. However, here in the UK, Sainsbury's is one of the supermarkets, a perfectly nice supermarket where I shop. And I think that most supermarkets sell these, but I really enjoy these, which are called Trip Drinks. And they're marketed here in the UK as a nice kind of like wine alternative where you want to chill without the hangover. And I love these things. I really like this flavour, which is raspberry orange blossom. It's delicious. And I really like the peach one that I really enjoy. And often I do sling these in my case if we're traveling in the UK, and I just have one before bed just because I really enjoy it. And at home, I often drink these if my husband's having a glass of wine, and I drink one of these instead of wine or in between glasses. You know, I just like them. However, it contains CBD. Now, to me, this did not seem something that I would have flagged up if had I not read this policy as not allowed, because right here in the UK, like I say, you can order them from Amazon. I get them in the supermarket. They're sold in local corner shops. You do have to be 18 to purchase them, but you also have to be 18 to buy scissors. So I just didn't see it as a big deal. However, if I'd packed this in my case, I would have risked getting in a lot of trouble with Disney Cruise Line and potentially being refused boarding, which would have been embarrassing. It would have been awful for my children, who would have been like, where's mummy going? We're going on a cruise, bye mummy. So it wouldn't have been good. So long story short, if you're from the UK and you enjoy these trip drinks, or I'm sure other brands are available, or the drops, like a lot of people I know use the CBD drops or gummies, do not pack them. It will get you in big trouble. I nearly did. I'm so glad that I have read the policy, and now I've read the policy to you, so I know that we're going to be okay. So other people might not know. Please do share this video with other people going on a Disney cruise so that those other people do not get in trouble. If you're in Disney Cruise Line Facebook groups or whatever, share this video so that no one else makes this mistake, because we do not want people being refused boarding over something you can buy in Sainsbury's. That would not be cool, would it? So that's what you're not supposed to pack on a Disney cruise. Now you want to know what you should be packing for your Disney cruise. And for that, click on this video on screen now. I'm sharing with you everything you should be packing. And to pack along with me in some pack with me videos, I've got a whole playlist of pack with me fun. Click on that video, or join me inside of my Magical Adventures Club for loads more magic and printables to help you get organized, plus early release videos and all the vlogs too. So I will see you guys over there. Bye.